For them, sure.
For the players.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for them, sure. Sorry, that's why. I mean, absolutely. It's a chance for them to have a uniform, a NFL jersey, an NFL helmet. But listen, I mean, there's a lot of guys who aren't going to be here past this weekend that are out there. So even though they're happy, like, it's going to turn pretty quickly for a lot of them.
And a lot of them would know that. You know, that might even make it a
Most
little bit.
likely, yes.
You know,
Most likely, yes.
Where you could have sort of be in good spirits about it because this is your one.
Yeah.
For some of those guys, this is your one weekend in the league.
But it does happen, right? I mean, this is where Joe Andreessen came from last year, right?
Yes.
So like,
Sure,
as much as you know the odds
players.
would be stacked against you, just last year, a guy that fit this profile, I don't think anybody was really expecting him to make any noise, but he got there and impressed enough to get invited to come back and then ultimately ended up making the team. So, any guy that is showing up there without any kind of fanfare has at least that, hey, this team is at least open enough. If I do enough things right, maybe, I have a chance. So in that way, maybe, I don't know, that might decrease the level of happiness a little bit because you might be feeling like I got to really be good today. Like I got to be on it if I want to have any shot at all, even if it's unrealistic.
Yeah, totally. And listen, here's the other part about that. If they impress today in any regard, but there's no room, just make the coaches remember you, that maybe down the road they can call you up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and say, hey, you came in, you learned our playbook for a weekend. We really liked your attitude. Like, that's a lot of what today is, too. There was a guy out there today, Matt Jaworski. He's a local kid. He went to St. Francis High School. He was the Patriot League Defensive Player of the Year, actually, from Fordham. And he was on a tryout basis, but he said he had just come from the Seahawks camp as well. So a lot of these guys, that's what they're doing. They go as many of these things as they can, as long as because you only get 2 weekends. So obviously that's just this one and the Seahawks and the Bills. But the point is, like, if you can at least get remembered from one of them, then you never know. That's what happened with Andreessen last year. Andreessen went to the Chiefs first, and then he came to the Bills, and he actually made the team. But there could be somebody who, you know what, we remember that guy. Let's go back and talk to him from when we had him here in May.
Forgive me now, I don't know if this was pertaining to the Bills or not because there's so much of this sort of news making the rounds. A lot of teams are doing this. But I read today that there was a quarterback that was supposed to go do what you just said. He was somewhere else and was coming to another team this week, but was in Green Bay last week and did so well that they're going to sign him. So he's not coming to this other team's, rookie camp.
They're not letting him out of the building?
They're not letting him out of the building, right. I don't think it was the Bills, but it was some other team.
It could be Taylor Elgersma. He is a Canadian quarterback who the Packers are signing.
Okay.
That could be the guy you're talking about.
I think that is the guy, yes.
Yep.
So they had to pivot and find a different guy to bring in as a quarterback.
I didn't know you could go to more than one. They're not under contract.
Right.
So
correct.
Would they probably sign a waiver or something in case there's an injury?
Well, Mike, I mean, actually, Max Hairston isn't under contract. He's out there. What happens is these guys, they actually they're not waivers. Now, the guys on tryout basis, I'm not sure like how it works for them, but the drafted guys or that have not signed their contracts, they have insurance policies through times like this. And if they get hurt, that has happened before. I think Dante Fowler, remember that years ago with the Jags? Like the teams, they still give them their contract from where they were drafted, basically, because you're slotted, and they do that. So I don't know if the tryout players would have some sort of insurance. I think they would want to get on that. But I don't know if there's a waiver or anything like that, because, yeah, you're right. You're kind of taking a risk there, I guess.
So what stood out today to you? Hairston would be the guy that you would have the most attention on, I think. He's the most prominent first pick and has a role kind of waiting for him. So we're not going to find out if he's going to win that job based on what happens this weekend. But you can eyeball him for the first time and get a look at how he moves around and how he interacts. And how did that go? What did you observe today?
Yeah, I tweeted some video, and I think a lot of people are seeing what I saw on the video, which is his change of direction, the way he can flip his hips. Like, he's just an elite athlete. You can tell that. Sometimes you go out there and you see that from these guys, and I kind of saw that from him today, which is when he was doing some drills, just some positional work now. You're moving back and forth. You're moving laterally. You're changing directions. You're sprinting. You're stopping, all that kind of stuff. He just looked different than a lot of the other guys. And you could see how smooth he was when he flips his hips, he flips his shoulders. He's going in one direction, spins around, and goes so quickly without a hitch. That's something I noticed right away. I tweeted out some video. I showed that. In the video, he's next to Jordan Hancock, a fellow draft pick, obviously, who's a defensive back. And actually, if you watch Jordan Hancock, he does very well. But you can see that Max Hairston is still kind of at a little bit of a different pace, right? But I think it's unfair to Jordan Hancock because he's next to Max Hairston, if that makes sense, in this particular clip that I put out there, because people were commenting about, oh, man, he makes 37 look so slow. He's not. Jordan Hancock looked fine, but because actually there's another, the second video I posted, you could actually make the argument Jordan Hancock, like he was even a little bit more smooth in a couple of little different spots, but it's just funny to watch that. So that's what I took away from him, from Max Hairston, just kind of on the hoof, just watching him, just the elite athletic traits. You know, there's the fastest guy, you know, at the combine, sub 4.3 speed, and you can kind of see where that comes from just from his movements.
Seems like the guy has a nice personality, too. I think he's going to be fun for you guys, Hairston.
I think so, too. Caught up with him after he did media. I was over talking with a bunch of players. Paul was at the podium, but after he was done, I caught up with him, and I told him I have a son named Max. Call him Mad Max. You know, he thought that was cool, laughing. He was very, very engaging. He seemed like he was a great personality when we had him on the Zoom call. So yeah, I agree with you. I think it's a guy that seems like we'll be able to. He'll be very approachable.
You put a tweet out recently for the Extra Point show, like handicapping starting corner week 1 with Hairston and Trey White and a couple of others. How do you see that, and what kind of feedback did you get?
Yeah, interesting. So the way I put it out there, what I said was, if you had 100 shares of stock of equal value and you had to place them on who's going to be the starting corner opposite Christian Benford week 1, how much are you putting on Hairston, Tre'Davious White, Dane Jackson, Jamarcus Ingram, or other would be the fifth choice. And Hairston, I would say, was overwhelmingly the favorite, but there were quite a few people who gave it to Trey, who would put more on Trey White than Max Hairston. I didn't see as much for Dane Jackson, a little bit here or there, but it seems like that's going to be where people are focused. And I don't disagree with that necessarily. I think it's probably between those two. I think Max Hairston's going to get as much runway as possible to win this job. Tre'Davious White is still a guy that you can play. And you know, at least I think they think he can play still, right? I mean, the injury and all that aside, you know, they brought him here and they paid him a little bit of money because they want him on the roster and they can turn to him if they need to. But I think the plan is going to be, like, we're going to see if this kid can do it. If Max Hairston can win this job, he's going to play. So, you know, if I sat here now, obviously I couldn't tell you that. But if I gave you stock on who's going to get the opportunity, I think Max Hairston would clearly be number one.
60, 30, 10.
Okay.
Would be my breakdown. Hairston, White, Jackson. I might even go 70, 20, 10.
Ooh, okay. I don't know if I would go that high. I think 60 might be. In fact, I might even go a little less. I think there could be more of a battle there. I just think about how, you know, Max Hairston is as much of the elite traits we just talked about. Trey White knows the system. He's been here. And, you know, if he can show up and be even any semblance of what he was, you know, pre-injury, and I know that might be a long shot. I get it. If that is the case, I think Max Hairston has a fight on his hands.
Okay. I was wondering, I should have got this in earlier before we started talking about players, and Hairston in particular. Who qualifies for this? Like, you mentioned the tryout guys already, of course, the draft picks, the UDFAs, but there are, like Frank Gore Jr., there are players who were around last year that are on the roster today.
Yeah, there was 4 guys on today's roster, that on today's rookie minicamp roster, that were on the team last year. Running back Frank Gore Jr., offensive lineman Mike Edwards, not to be confused with safety Mike Edwards, defensive backs Daquan Hardy, who you remember from the punt return battle last year, and Takori Couch. These are first-year players, they call them, who really didn't play at all last year. So even though they're not technically rookies, the NFL has a term called a first-year player, which isn't a rookie. It's actually a guy in his second year. But for purposes of him actually getting accredited seasons, he's still considered a first-year player. So that's what those guys are. Somebody asked me about Travis Clayton. I'm not sure why he wouldn't be, but he wasn't there today. Travis Clayton was another rookie last year who was on the practice squad, international player. So, you know, there could be some designation there, or it could just be because they felt they had enough offensive linemen or something like that. I'm not sure. But basically that's who qualifies, Mike, and there are guys who are not on an NFL team that you could invite to the camp that have been veterans, maybe to come in. That's happened before. I don't have a specific example for you hear this right now, but I do remember in the past there might be a guy. In fact, how about this? There's another guy. There is a guy named Marcus Harris. He was actually drafted in the 7th round last year by the Houston Texans, and he was a draft pick, and he didn't make it. Then he went into the Patriots practice squad, so he was in the same boat, and he's on the Bills, even though he's from another team. So those kind of players. I think there have been other guys before who've showed up to these things who have a little bit of time because they're kind of a veteran that isn't on a team.
And they are working with the full complement of, like, all the coaches are there, right, for this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. This stuff falls under phase 3, which is basically you can run plays, offense against defense, 11 on 11, 7 on 7. There's no hitting. There's no helmets and hitting or anything like that. But they were running offensive plays today against defenders.
What might coaches be looking for? I mean, it is like you're getting acclimated here, and coaches would have seen lots of film on whoever is in their particular position group. But without hitting, with it being so relatively maybe lacking for like structure, what is a coach trying to spot?
Is this a good time for me to say that everybody should listen to the latest It's Always Game Day in Buffalo with Matt Bove and I talking to Sean McDermott because we asked him this exact question.
All right, what
are
did he tell you?
For?
So you're going to think that I stole it.
Yeah, that's okay. It's good. I think you teed me up, Mike. It's all good to promo that because it was a great conversation. But Matt asked Sean McDermott this exact question. I was kind of a bit surprised. I thought Sean would say, like, hey, how they're interacting with their teammates. You know, are they coachable? His answer actually was for Sean. He said he's kind of looking at the body type, how they fit in, what they can do with their body. You know, you're trying to get a sense of each individual a little bit more than even like, yeah, the team stuff matters, but you got to have a plan for these guys, right? If you see at rookie minicamp, okay, you know, Landon Jackson's this really long guy who can do this or that with his hands. You know, that's a good sign for us to do this. But what if he can't do this? Then maybe we need to have a plan for him as we go forward. Once he gets in with the rest of the veterans to kind of move that around. So he said he's looking for those kinds of things, looking for the body type, the traits that kind of go along with it, and to kind of look at each individual and kind of what they're doing and what they're suited for.
I did watch a good chunk of this conversation you had that you're referring to from your It's Always Game Day in Buffalo podcast. I didn't make it to the question about minicamp and what they're looking for, but the front end of that, talking about, you know, the media and, you know, your jobs and just McDermott's experience and how he's evolved. It sort of reminded me of a talk we had an opportunity to have with him last summer before the heat of the season was really on, and it was really enjoyable. This was, you know, 10 times longer than what Mike and I had with him, and I thought you guys both did a really nice job with that.
I appreciate it, and I'll tell you, the background is we were hoping to talk to Sean during the owners' meetings to do this podcast. We had set it up with the Bills, and we were going to have Sean McDermott on the Always Game Day in Buffalo podcast. We were ready to rock and roll. Well, because of just scheduling and how things turned out and Sean being on the competition committee and all of that, we just weren't able to do it. So, you know, walk away from the owners' meetings. Okay, well, we still got stuff from him, but we didn't have him on the podcast. And I'll actually credit, you know, Bill's PR director, Derek Boyko. He reached out to Matt and I recently and said, hey, you know, we'd still love to do this. Sean will sit down with you guys. Like, when do you want to do it? So we did it this week. And I'm going to tell you, I'm so glad that we didn't do it at the owners' meetings, but we did do it now. If we would have done it at the owners' meetings, it would have been your normal, what do you think about the roster here? What do you think about this guy and that guy? And what are you looking at in the draft?
Yeah.
This was not it. That's all done. What we did was we talked very little football. We dove in just to Sean's philosophies and life and his pursuit of a championship. And there was a lot of really, really interesting stuff in there. Great feedback we're getting from a lot of people. I appreciate it. We tweeted out a clip yesterday. Sean told a really interesting story.
This story
about how he
blew my mind. Sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. He was at a little league field. He said a ball field. His son and daughter both play softball and baseball. And he said he was at a field, and a gentleman came up to him, and he's sitting in the outfield watching the game. Introduced himself. Hi. You know, they exchanged cordials, and then the guy said, hey, I want to thank you for what you've done here with you and Brandon Bean, the organization. I was losing hope as a Bills fan. And Sean said, you know, we really appreciate it. Thank you very much. And then he said the guy said to him, you know, I get this feeling that, you know, the Bills are okay being number 2. And Sean, you could see, if you watch the clip, even relaying the story, you could see that pained him.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even say it angered him, right? It pained him.
Yep.
And he then said that he told the guy, he said, well, that's not, he said, then you don't know me and you don't know this team. That is the furthest thing from who we are, being okay with being number 2. Then he on the heels of this, he also told us how he has this vision, right? He envisions what it could be like someday winning a world championship and what the scene is like on the field. And he's always thought about maybe even just walking away and not just because this is it. This is what we're all about. And, it's not about the interviews. It's about holding the trophy up for everybody. And then he relayed that to this story with this guy and said, and I'm sitting there thinking he's going to tell me how like this guy's mad. Now that quote is a bit angry, but what he said was interesting. At the end, he goes, I want to win it for that guy so I can give him and show him you're not number 2 anymore. This is what we're about being number 1. I thought it was fascinating. You know what I mean? I thought it was really cool.
What kind of blew my mind about it, not that people are shy all the time about telling you how they really feel, but I'm stunned the guy said that to McDermott, like to his face. It's one thing to call us and say, I think this organization's happy being number 2. It's another thing to run into the coach in person in the outfield of a Little League game and lay that on him. Not that I don't know how, what sort of temperament the person had presenting this to McDermott, but it just surprised me that someone would directly say that, because I feel like I can always tell, and you guys probably have your own similar experiences, like a certain approach. I feel like I know this person wants to tell me they don't like something about you or somebody, but they don't have the guts to spit it out. And they're just sort of stammering around and like, all right, well, nice meeting you. To just come out and tell the head coach of the Bills, you strike me as being satisfied being second place. I mean, that's pretty ballsy.
Yeah,
it's worse than that.
I agree with you. I agree with you for sure. No doubt about it. There were a lot of things like that. I mean, I know Sean pretty well. I think I would say as a reporter can know a head coach in the NFL. I think I know Sean really well, and there were a lot of things I learned about him that I did not know in this conversation about. I did not realize how big of a dance family, like how much of they dance. He actually is. He said he brings 2 shirts to a wedding sometimes. I'm not kidding you. Like what? Sean McDermott.
You guys are cut from the same cloth because you can tear it up out there, Sal Capaccio.
But he did say don't invite me to the wedding. But we love to dance, and we talked about playing instruments. He's learned to play the guitar. He's learned to play acoustic guitar right now, and he does have experience playing the drums. Like these are all little things that I had no idea. And I think though there's the micro here to get into and talk about that, but the macro of just him being this open book that he's been more of over the last year or so, I just think is really awesome, and it really gives people a glimpse into who he is.
While you've been talking, I'm just sort of making plans to get him on ADP chasing so we can discuss Keon Coleman's fantasy draft status for this year. It should be pretty good.
Well, I'll have to extend an invite to the attic if he wants to see some guitars.
Yeah, for sure. He might do that.
Sal, one more. There was a report yesterday from Arif Hassan that he's got the Vikings playing back-to-back games in Europe. Pittsburgh and Cleveland, Dublin and I guess London. And I thought, is that, how good of an idea is that? And I think it's good. The pro of it, I guess, for Minnesota would be that they don't have to travel to those 2 cities. They're not playing 2 literal road games, but they're in Europe for 2 weeks. And, maybe that's even an advantage, too, like the Bills had to play Jacksonville when they had already been there for a week. So could you see that? That would end the Bills-Steelers speculation if it were correct.
Yeah, this makes a lot of sense. Just judging how the NFL does things and has been doing things. The Jags obviously have gone over to London now for 2 straight weeks, and we know the NFL is starting to tinker with that. They want to start doing this with teams. They want to start having more teams have, 2 games over there, or 1 game here and another game internationally. And this Mike North told us this a couple of years ago they might start doing this because, let's be honest, guys, eventually teams are going to be going over there a lot more often, whether that's in London or anywhere else over there. And this makes sense. They would do something like this. The other part of it is the opponent. When you sort through it, apparently the Steelers do have the ability maybe to protect a game, and if they did that, they would protect the Packers, right? So maybe they say that. We've all heard rumblings about the Bills, but as I've told you, from the way I understand it, the league probably doesn't want to put Josh Allen MVP over at 9:30 a.m. on a Sunday against a name brand, but they could do that. Vikings and Seahawks are the two teams that it kind of gets narrowed to when you talk about eliminating Packers and Bills, eliminating all your AFC North opponents from that. Now you're left with Vikings and Seahawks. Vikings make sense. They also have to play the Jags, right? Would be in London, I think, Mike. I think to play the Jags, whoever it would be over there, Jets or Browns, one or the other.
It would be Cleveland.
Yeah. Cleveland, thank you. I'm sorry. So it would make sense that the Vikings could be that team. But I think from an overall league perspective, this is where we're going. Teams are going to be going internationally more often. There's more international games every year. And they have specifically said they're going to start doing this kind of as test runs, I guess, with some teams like the Jags have been.
The only other team scheduled in Europe, if Cleveland and Pittsburgh are taken, so to speak, that the Bills play is Miami. Or the Jets, I guess. The Jets. That's also, they're also over there. Is it to be ruled out? Would the Bills be considered for those games, or are you assuming, or even know that they won't be?
Not ruled out. Asked Mike North specifically. He said not ruled out. You could do a division game. The Jags have played 2 division games in London. They played the Colts once. They played the Texans once. It's just something that I don't see happening. It's something I think the league kind of shies away from.
Okay.
Maybe Jacksonville's a different case because of Jacksonville having their series there all the time and every year going over there. I mean, the Bills did play 2 division games in Toronto when they did that. So maybe when you have a team that's always going to one spot, that kind of opens that door a little more.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't rule it out completely, but I would assume it's not going to happen.
What did you have today from Pat Hammer that Josh is going to be on the Today Show? Is that Monday?
Okay, so just an update on this. I'm glad you asked me, okay? Because earlier today, Pat Hammer, our buddy Pat Hammer, WGRZ TV, NBC, texted me and said, hey, the Today Show just teased that Josh Allen's coming on Monday. Now, we know next week, Today Show, Good Morning America, the CBS Morning Show, they're all going to be having these reveals. This is what happens every year. So now you get to, okay, Josh on NBC? What is that? Is that week 1 Sunday
night? Yep, right.
Now I will tell you, since then, I have been told it is not certain Josh is going on NBC Sunday. So they did mention it. That did happen today, but that might not happen. So I'm not really sure where all that goes, but just because of scheduling and things like that, with Josh Allen himself, it's not certain he's going to be on. So I'm not really sure where that goes.
I really wanted that to be certain.
I am gonna ignore Sal and say that it is.
I'm gonna treat it like it
because they wouldn't want. We just gave it away. We just gave it away. We will see. All right. Have a nice weekend.
You got it, guys.
That's our Sal Capaccio.